A few things up front. First, we're looking at all the 86 Dinobots together because I feel like most people are going to want the full team anyway. And because a lot of what I have to say about any given figure can apply to all of the others. Second, I've put repro labels on everyone, so they're not proper representations of their out-of-box look. I started with Grimlock, eventually stickered up Slug, and then it just sort of became a thing that I felt compelled to do for everyone so the team would match. It's partially why we haven't looked at anyone other than Grimlock on the channel yet. Third, and the other main reason why we haven't looked at anyone other than Grimlock yet, I'm calling him Slug, because that's the name on the box, and it's the name he's been using canonically for over a decade. Over 15 years if you count borrowing Snarl in animated. I promise you, I do not care if you prefer to use his original name, and I care even less about arguing over it. My video, my rules, deal or watch something else. I really need to get around to that duck tank talk video I've been thinking about making for a couple of years now. With all of that baggage out of the way, let's talk dinosaurs. The team looks great together, for sure. Especially now that they're all covered in repro labels. Though, looking at them as a whole, I do think Snarl's back could have done with maybe a little more color variation. Which I hate to say because stickering these plates was tedious, but I don't think they accomplish enough in Dino Mode unless you're specifically looking at them from more of a side angle. If you look at them from straight on, this is just it's just a lot of eh. Of course, from said side angles, Snarl looks great, so what am I even complaining about? I don't know, I want to say a bunch of meaningful, impactful stuff about their Dino Modes, but really all I've got is, yeah, these look really good, and all go great together. They're a little too greebly to be completely G1 cartoon accurate, thank goodness, but they still very much look the part. And it's a very cohesive look, too. They all share the more intricate greebly detail, the same gold and silver and gray and red, or in Swoop's case, blue, color scheme across all 5 figures. It's really good stuff. I keep bumping Sludge's little bean. Grimlock is Grimlock, plus I've already looked at him several times. Slug is cool and suitably potato with legs-like. I dig the mounted gun-looking lighter details on the sides, and the frill looks way better with the black and silver sticker detailing, which, yes, that's like 3 stickers per plate. I kinda wish the horns were red instead of gray, but not enough to buy an upgrade kit to change that. I love the detailing along Sludge's back, and his angy little noggin is adorable. His proportions are maybe a little stretched out from head to tail compared to the slightly more chubby squish I'm used to, but it's fine. Also, the neck could stand to be maybe a little longer, but that's also fine. I don't really care about the belly toes personally, but I understand the complaints. Snarl, like I said, looks a little plain from the front due to all the blank red and gray along the center of his back, but turn him slightly and he looks way better. Doesn't have a thing for a blast effect, though, so that stinks. I do appreciate how the sword just sort of hides on his underside, though. Really, it's just the seam running down the middle of his face that bothers me. I feel like it would be a lot less obvious if they didn't paint the insides quite so close to the edge, but we'll talk more about that in robot mode. And Swoop is Swoop. This is going to be a running theme, I think. He does look good, and the wingspan is pretty nice, but I don't know, he still just looks like a contorted robot to me. Like always. Which, yes, is accurate, but it's also not particularly exciting. Though it will always be funny to me just how much of an outlier Swoop is. He's the only flying one, but he uses blue, which looks fantastic by the way, instead of red, and it's the only Dinobot without those inexplicably pleasing hip-shoulder circles. Like, the other 4 all have it. It kind of makes Swoop look like that one kid in school who hangs out with a clique without entirely adopting their dress code, or like Grimlock and his friends brought his younger brother with them to the mall. For articulation, we're just going to go over it real quick, but it's Grimlock's articulation. He's got the head swivel, he's got the up and down, he can open and close his mouth pretty decently. The arms are the shoulders are ball jointed, so you get some rotation and wiggle and in and out and stuff. You've got bends at the elbows, nothing for the tail or waist. The hips are the robot mode shoulders, so you got the forward and back, in and out, swivel, and because of the extremely clever design on the elbows, you get actual properly facing knees for the Dino Mode, and the toes can twiddle. Slug is similar-ish. The mouth can open and close, but that's it for the head. The rear legs, I'll get this out of the way for a second, the rear legs can just spin, they can't go out, they can't rotate, and they can also bend here and bend here. I prefer to just extend them all the way and have them back like this, but you've got options there. And then the forelegs are the robot mode arms, so they can rotate, go in and out, rotate at the thigh, I guess in this case, and then it's a double jointed knee elbow, so you can kind of shift it forward and back as well as bend it pretty far. Sludge, again, is very similar. They're all very similar, but Sludge has the up and down motion at the neck, and if you go down really far, it looks really weird. You can rotate up here at the neck, you can look way up and down at the head, and then you also have the opening mouth. The forelegs can rotate forward and back a bit. They cannot go out. They also can't go in because of how it all transforms. You get some rotation down here, and then you get the feet that can move up and down. The tail does nothing, but the rear legs, they are the robot mode arms, so you get that rotation, the in and out motion, thigh in this case, or bicep swivel, and then you've got a knee/elbow. And again, Snarl, very similar. You can't do anything with the head except open the mouth because of how he transforms, and that's the same with Slug. The forelegs are a lot like Sludge's, where they're very limited. You've got a ball joint up here, so you can rotate as well as kind of approximate a swivel and a slight bit of in and out motion, and then this swivels forward and back, and that's it for the forelegs. The rear legs are a bit oddly hampered because of how he transforms, but you get that forward and backward motion. You do not get outward motion. You can kind of bend them in if you want, and then down here you can bend at the ankle, you can rotate, and you can also bend at the knee if you want. And finally, for Swoop, the head can go up and down at a couple of different hinges. It can go up and down here, but also here. It unfortunately cannot rotate. I feel like a rotation would have been great, and I think there has to have been a way to engineer it in here, but they didn't. As you saw before, the mouth can't open. The wings can flap up and down slightly, but that's as far up as they go if you keep the arms pegged in. If you unpeg the arms, they can go up a little bit higher, and that's it, because now they're hitting this backpack, which is clearly legs. The other parts of the wings can bend a little bit more, though. You can flex these up on a double joint or down, so you get a little bit more posability in the wings there, and the toes can bend if you want to do that. The individual Dino mode proportions are a bit different from each other, or a lot different in some cases, but the 86 Dinobots are still all leaders, and they have the mass to back it up. So of course they're pretty sizable when you put them next to a Modern Deluxe or a Voyager. And I have to say, even though scale isn't all that important to me, I do like having a representation of the full team that's this big. But I like how they're not so big that I can't display them all together, unlike some third-party offerings. Alright, so before we get humanoid with all of these Dinobots, and I'm going to go through all the transformations, but I'm going to try to be quick about it. If you want to support the channel, I've got Ko-fi and Patreon stuff to link at the end of the video, as well as down in the description. That is greatly appreciated. Otherwise, typical YouTube stuff of like, comment, share, subscribe also helps out a lot. Okay, now we're going to start with Grimlock because we already did Grimlock, or rather already looked at Grimlock. But we're going to do him first. Get him out of the way, because again, looked at him a bunch of times. I'm going to remove this. We will talk more about this when we get into the accessories, but I'm going to remove this, going to remove the gun, and for anyone unfamiliar, the gun is these little tabs right down here that tab into these little slots right up here, and we will again come back to that. Now, I prefer to tuck the dino arms in, so I just kind of pull them in and line them up so that the forearms are kind of parallel-ish to this piping here. That's just how I prefer to arrange them. You could do whatever you want with them. Straighten out the dino head and close the mouth. I don't close it all the way because I painted the teeth, but again, that's a personal thing. Pop this open. Now split his chest and bring up and out these little wings. Flip the head up, and that'll stay like that. And now this chest section, we're actually first going to straighten out the legs and clip them in place. You want to get this little nub here inside here, and that clips that into place. Then you can flip out the fists, and then you can unclip the elbow from here, because there's a separate joint, this little tab thing that tabs in down here that keeps it from bending this way in Dino mode. And yeah, that's super clever and I love it, but I said that many times already. So now the torso disconnects, it just pulls out and then shifts up, and there is a little tab down here, like right in here, that's formed by putting the two halves of the tail together. And that slides up in here. So that's how you want to push that together. But slide that out, swing this up, and bring this back, and this will peg in to place. Now we can split the tail and butt. I'm going to bring these little doors out, and what I like to do is fold in the tail tips first on these double hinges, because that just kind of makes this mass smaller and easier to get things around. And to finish off the legs, I'm going to unfurl them. There are these little slots back here that tab into these little tabs on the back of his hip skirt, whatever, and just untab that, swing the legs down. And now you can see that the knees are on these little, like the legs are on these little struts that are shifted outward. You want to shift those in and then swing it forward, and this T-tab here will clip in here. And that will get the leg kind of, or knee rather, whatever, shin, locked in place. Again, shift this over, swing that in, and straighten out the leg. And lastly, bring these things back in, and those will close off the backs of the legs. And then you just take these panels that were like this and shift them up and back to finish making the feet. And there is Grimlock. Actually, I forgot. Last thing, you want to take the dino head, and there's this little square peg here that tabs into this little bit on the back. Now we're done. And now it is time for Slug, and once again we're going to remove this and talk about it later. Also going to unplug his gun from the tail. I like how it stores in there. Then we'll put that back in his hand in a minute. Now, let's see. We're going to take the rear legs and fold these up, and these will go all the way in, and then these will curl up and all the way in, so his rear legs just kind of ball up. The forelegs we can kind of straighten out, and want to get his fists out of here, and I have a little bit of difficulty doing that, so I just use the gun handle. So I just peg that in to bring the fist up, and then once the fist is up, you want to rotate it 180 degrees. Because you do have to rotate it to push it into the dino foot, because that's how it sits flat. So, because if you try and do it this way, it's not going to go in all the way. So do that. And we'll just have the arms kind of, now we'll leave them up and out, so that they're out of the way. Now, I'm going to take the tail, and there's these little bits here that sit around what will become the toes. Those just, that just unplugs from there. And I forgot to do this. We want to do this first. Take these panels from the sides and pop these up. Now we can untab this, and then this kind of shifts upward, and then you can split this apart, because there are these little tabs on this armature. There you can kind of see the tab on one side, so split that, and then this whole thing can kind of come up and back. And that's it for that for now. For the legs, you want to untab the feet from the, I guess, butt. There's these little spots right here where there's these tabs that go into these little slots here, so you want to untab those first. So untab those, and then you just straighten out the legs. There's move the hips, move the knees, and the legs are all straightened out. Rotate the waist 180 degrees, and you could, if you want, untab the ankles and just leave the legs like this. You could do that, but I like to do the cleaner option that they give you. So what you do is bring the heel all the way out, or ankle rather, take this little door here, pull that up, and then you swing this back, and you kind of need to rotate this a little bit just so that this clears this, but swing this in and then swing this back up and close that up, and that gives you a much cleaner leg compared to this. But you can leave it out if you want. I just preferred not to. So again, swing that out, bring that up, bring this in, and then close this back up. That is Slug's lower body. Now, I'm going to close the dino mouth, pull down this door. There we go. And kind of, this is a little bit tricky to do because of this hinge in particular is very tight on this figure for me, but yeah, we'll see. So you basically want to, there's a double hinge up in here, and you want to take this entire red half of the torso and swing it out. So kind of want to pull out and down, and that will also disconnect this piece of the frill. And then you can also kind of see the double hinge in there. So swing this out, bring the frill down, and just kind of leave it open like this for now. And this one is just a little bit trickier because of how the whole hinge is one of the two parts of the double hinge is much stiffer on this side, but that shifts out. There we go. Now the lower jaw that includes the robot head comes down, and this will actually tab in. There's a slot back here and a tab right up here that'll tab into it. So you bring that in and that will snap in. Then you can raise the robot mode head up. And once all that's done, now you can bring these pieces in, because you need this in place before you bring the rest of the sides of the chest in. But bring these in and those will line up. Close this up and it now sits inside of the halves rather than over those little lips. And there we go. We are almost done. Just have to do the backpack. So to do the backpack, it's a little bit weird. Basically, you want to get this pushed back down, and then you want to take this piece, and there are these little slots here and these little circular bits that go over these tabs on the back of the frill. So you want to lift this up on that hinge and tab those into place. And with those tabbed in place, you can swing this up and in, and it'll all kind of tab and push together to kind of sort of lock into the upper body. And then this just kind of comes up, tail like comes up and sits right in there. And if you push it and get it all positioned correctly, it will stay in place, but it's also not super securely tabbed in, so that's something. But there is Slug. Now we come to Sludge. Going to, again, unplug the sword, and we will come back to that. We are going to unplug the gun from here, and it's similar to Grimlock where you've got these tabs on the side, slots down here, and again, off to the side. And now Sludge is, I think, my favorite engineering-wise of all the Dinobots. He just does some really cool stuff. So, to start, I'm going to take the forelegs and spin them 180 degrees, just to do that now. I'm going to take the arms, or back legs, and just going to bring them out just to work on them a little more easily. So these rotate 180 degrees. This can kind of shift down in that double hinge so that it's in more of an arm-like position. And then just like Slug, you want to get these fists out, but this is actually tougher than Slug because of how everything works, and like you can't come in from the top because this is closed off, so I end up having to use the weapon pegs again. So pull it out, rotate it 180 degrees, just like Slug. And same deal here, shift this down, shift down, there we go. Rotate this 180 degrees, and then plug this in to flip out the fist and rotate that 180 degrees. Here's where things get a little bit tricky. I'm gonna just kind of bring the neck out a little bit and unplug this. That's gonna just swing for a bit. I'm going to take these pieces up here, and these pull up, and they actually go over a little bit of this back piece. So you want to get those up and over those tabs. And then you can also unpeg these from down here. There are these little pegs that kind of go into the side, and this is the tricky part, is getting these separated, because there's not a lot of just kind of have to wiggle it, and like I'm kind of, what I'm doing is I'm shifting this lower part around a little bit while also shifting this a little bit. But that'll open up. There we go. And now with that done, these pieces can unpeg from each other, and then this entire gray piece here actually disconnects and swings down. Because, as I said, there is a lot to what happens with Sludge. Now, to make things a little bit easier, these are just going to fold in. So those are going to be a little bit smaller, and I don't have to worry about them like getting in the way of stuff as much. I'm going to now take these flaps and open these up. They actually have there's like a gap down here, so unpeg these from each other, and these will just fold out like wings. And with that done, you can also bring up the arms, and then this red piece here will come up and rotate 180 degrees, and then we will deal with that towards the end. We want to do that first because dealing with the legs with that in place is a lot more difficult. So now I'm going to kind of split the legs and shift all this down, and getting the legs into place is a little bit tricky with Sludge because you have to get these knee struts in like this so that this other piece, the armature that the tail is attached to, can swing over it. You need to bend the knees and you need to angle the thighs because there's also a, let me get this rotated out of the way, there's a tab here that actually tabs into the front of the thigh. And on top of that, there is a little tab on the inside of what becomes the toe that tabs into a spot on the front of the pelvis in here. So there's a lot of little things you have to line up for Sludge, but it works well. It's just a matter of like knowing that you definitely have to do that. So with all that done, straighten out the legs, shift these over a lot like Grimlock, and then there's a tab here that clips in here. And again, straighten this out, shift this over, clip it in. And around this angle, you want to make sure the tail is folded all the way down, and then this comes back in. This swings back down, and then this peg section will peg back in. It basically goes back to where it was in Dino mode, except now this piece is folded in and the tail strut is swung around. And this swings up and will peg into place along the side of the leg. And finally, the toe just flips up, and you can untab the ankle from the side there. And that is one of Sludge's legs. Other one, same deal. Make sure this is down, bring this in, bring this down, and tab this in, bring up the toe, unpeg the heel, and then peg in the dino tail half. Rotate the waist 180 degrees, and that is the entirety of Sludge's lower body. And for the upper body, pretty simple stuff. Just going to get this out of the way. You want to take the forelegs and untab them from up here. There's this little tab on this black piece that tabs in up here. So bring these in, rotate these down, bring the head down, and this tab here will peg in right in here. You may need to kind of pull up as you do it, but pull up, peg it in, bring this in, and you can kind of curl the dino head around to, it just cleans things up a little bit. So there's that. Now the little flaps come in, and there are these little holes on these light gray pieces that peg over those tabs that were originally used to hold the forelegs in place for Dino mode. And that situates Sludge's wings. And to finish everything off, bring up the head, swing the entire front section up, and this will clip into place. But I just want to say really quick, we just appreciate the obscene molded details that they've got going on in here. Like, this is internal. You don't see this for the Dino mode, and you don't see it in the robot mode. It's only stuff you're going to see during transformation. That is impressive. Even on the inside of the chest, they've got a bunch of stuff. It's wild. Okay, and this swings up and pegs into place. Then we can get the arms situated, and oh, the ratchets on those shoulders, they do not sound good. It's something I've noticed with Sludge specifically when I got everyone out to do this video. It's fine, and like if the ratchets and the shoulders go, I really don't care, because he doesn't really need them to be that strong, but it is what it is. And now Snarl. In case anyone couldn't already tell, I've been tackling these in the order in which I got them. So, got Grimlock first, then Slug, then Sludge, then Snarl, then finally Swoop after, like, what, 3 years? Anyway, untab the sword. Let's go off to the side. Okay, with the sword out of the way, first thing you want to do, because I forgot to do this and had to do the whole editing thing around it, you want to unpeg these bits from his belly and just kind of bring these out a little bit. Otherwise, you won't be able to do a very important step of the transformation. So bring these out a little bit. Pull up here because this red piece is tabbed into what will become the toes. And then you can slide the entire thing down to separate out the main, like the front part of the body from the rear part. Now, I'm going to swing these out the rest of the way. Split the front of the body, including the face. And this will swing out, and there's just enough room with this pulled all the way up for these pieces to swing through that gap. So that is very important to do that extension. So with that done, I'm going to bring these down a bit more, because then we can take this piece and pop this up, and that will come up like that. And that gives us the room we need to take the first half of the Stegosaurus head and swing it in like so, and close this back up, and that will just tab back in. And we can straighten the leg out the rest of the way. From this angle, open this up, swing that head in, and swing this back in, tab it in, straighten out the leg. And then to finish off the legs, it's very simple. Straighten out the toes. Then you can, if you want, leave the forelegs out, but you can also, if we rotate this in, this can come up a little bit to get out of the way, untab from here and swing inward, and then you want to swing this down so that it's parallel to the actual leg, and then this whole thing swings inside the leg cavity, and should, I don't know why it's not, it should swing in. There we go. So that swings in, and then this piece swings back in, and it doesn't like peg into the leg, it more clips around this flap up here, but it all kind of goes together. And then down here, these pieces, you want to make sure they're together, and then you can untab. It's very stiff, but you can unpeg the heel from the side here, and that gives you one full foot. Same deal here. Push this in, swing this around, and bring this down, and then in. Make sure that gets situated. Swing this in, and that will clip over that door, and then unpeg the heel. And that is Snarl's lower body. Just going to rotate the waist around. Now, you can bring this back down. Here we go. And going to rotate the legs so that they're facing forward. And we're going to unpeg them from up here. Unfurl everything, and then this piece here will swing in and clip into what will become the shoulder. And that solidifies that. And then we can pull the dino knee back, flip out the fist, and then bring the knee back. But before bringing it back all the way, you want to rotate the foot 180 degrees, and this will swing up. And this little bit here will tab over this square peg there, and then this just goes in and settles into the forearm. And that is one arm done, or one leg done, however you want to look at it. Here, same deal. I'm going to bring this down a bit, rotate this, and push it in. Unpeg this, flip out the fist, swing this back in. It's very stiff on this arm. There we go. And this swings around and clips in there. And finally, going to split the tail. Split the tail. There we go. Split the tail. Unpeg the plates, and it's all like it'll all swing up. But it's a little bit, I don't know if it's just mine, but oh, that's actually the easiest it's ever happened. Usually it takes this little black piece with it, and I have to like push it back down to clip it in place. But that time it all came up without taking the black piece with it, so that's cool. So this hinges up, swings around, and then these tabs will now plug into these slots on the hinge. And this just kind of, there's a tab back here that tabs in back here as well. Or it will once the head is out of the way. Can push, get a finger up here and push the head out. And with the head pushed out of the way, now this will come in and tab into the back. And the chest piece is up like this for Dino mode. You just push this down to tab in and kind of close everything off. Make sure the head is up all the way, and there is Snarl. And finally, Swoop. So going to get this sword unplugged, and that untab the arm, which we're going to be untabbing anyway. But so sword goes off to the side. He does come with the sword though. The backpack, the legs untab here. There's little chunky bits here that the toes tab into. So untab these, straighten out the legs, and you can straighten them out all the way. And the toes are a little bit weird. Basically, you just want to straighten out the toes, and it's strange. Like, I find what works best is to get the legs into what I consider a straight position, and then just push the toes down so they're at a slight angle. They're not going to go like straight down or straight out. Unclip the toes and swing those forward, and then fold out the heel and undo the ankle tilt. Again, unclip the toe, fold out the heel, and bring out the ankle tilt. And that is it for Swoop's lower body. Very simple. For the upper body, going to fold in the wingtips, and this will tab in up here. Take the wing and the this bit here will swing around, and this little opening here will tab in over here. So just use that double hinge to get this situated and plugged in. And again, tab that in, swing this around, tab that in. Untab the arms. They tab in a couple of places. Specifically, there's a peg hole here and a tab here, peg hole here, tab here. So unplug the arms, then fold out the fists, as you tend to do, and that's all you do for the arms. The arms do not do anything else. You just ball up the fists or fold in the fists. And we could just have Swoop like this, which kind of works actually. You can even shift it forward a bit so you can make him this. It's looking like a robot dino saucer. This is a little bit scary because the tabs in this chest section just kind of bother me, but I find it's easiest to kind of swing things down this way rather than trying to go the other way, but that will untab the chest, so we can swing this out on a double hinge, similar to what happened with Sludge. Not Sludge, Slug. And then the dino head, you want to take this neck flap, and this actually swings forward so that you can bring this all the way down. And then there is a tab slot on the underside of the tip of the beak that tabs in right here over the waist. And that tabs in pretty darn securely in my experience. And with that tabbed in, the chest can now swing back in, and it kind of pegs over these circular bits on the cheeks. And I really wish the torso pegged together better, but it's fine. It's not too difficult to accidentally unpeg, and I don't really like that aspect of it, but whatever. I'm going to angle these wings back a little bit too. And finally, lastly, not leastly, going to pull up this plate around the head, and I find what works best for this is push the red bit forward and then pull up kind of underneath the brow ridge or eyebrows or whatever, because this is a slightly hook tab shaped thing, so it just makes it a little bit easier to unplug everything. So now I can swing the robot head back, and this strut here will clip in down here. And it does clip in, and then this just comes back up. And there is Swoop. Those transformations are the biggest reason I decided to do this as one video. I love how, with the exception of Grimlock and Swoop, they have some really interesting engineering that sets them apart as individuals. Maybe even more so than their dino and robot modes. There's nothing surprising about Grimlock, because it's about as refined a Grimlockian transformation as you can get. But it's also great in its own way and fun to do. Slug was really the first 86 Dinobot to impress me, engineering-wise, which makes sense because I got him after Grimlock and before everyone else. I really like how the dino jaw tucks into the now expanded torso, the way the legs ball up rather than fold over each other like you'd probably expect, and how they give you the option to either leave the haunches out on the robot mode legs or tuck them in for that cleaner look. Sludge takes things even further with how some of the back hides inside the shins and the tail halves tuck snugly against the legs. But really, it's the way the front of the torso and the arms swing up and around to recenter the rear dino legs and robot arms, and I guess dino butt mass. It's just a really cool, just the whole flipping out and rotating and flipping up. I like that. I don't necessarily think Snarl makes the same kind of leap over Sludge as Sludge did with Slug, but I do think that he's on the same level as Sludge. Having the legs clean up the way they do, along with that torso slider and the untucking of the toes from under the chest, is pretty wild. Swoop, though, he's, again, just kinda Swoop. He's Swoop-nuff. I do think it's clever how all those neck hinges work to recenter the robot noggin and wedge the dino noodle into the torso, but it's not on the same level as the rest of the team that isn't Grimlock. And as nice as his chest compression and expansion is, which does benefit the proportions of both modes, Slug already uses a similar trick, so it's not as exciting to see it a second time. Stylistically, I feel like we can just copy and paste most of what I've already said about the Dino Modes here. The team looks amazing and cohesive due to the sculpting and color choices, Swoop looks like the little brother who doesn't quite fit in but comes to the mall with everyone else anyway, and so on. Though I do think it's kind of funny how Grimlock ends up looking a little diminished next to Slug, Sludge, and Snarl. These three end up coming off as a little more bulky, especially Slug and Snarl, with the torsos beefy enough to end up on a Harlequin romance novel cover. I worked in a bookstore for several years. And as always, Swoop is the slimmest one. But at least now everyone looks really good from the front, thanks in no small part to, I want to say, around $80 to $100 worth of stickers. Wow. I'd need to sit down for a moment if my butt wasn't already parked in a chair. To be clear, I do not think that was money wasted. I just never did the math before. It's kind of a shock. But the stickers do look amazing, or rather make everyone look more amazing. Grimlock's been covered before, like I've mentioned a few times, and I did do a tiny bit of custom paint work in a couple of spots, but yeah, he's a handsome bot. Slug is a bit of a mixed bag for me. A lot of his individual details are really nice, the sculpting is on point, and the stickers add a lot of lovely color variety, but I'd have personally preferred a black head instead of a red one. Again, not enough to buy an upgrade kit to change. I also would have liked it if his torso wasn't quite so horizontally stretched out. In addition to looking a little awkward in general, it also makes his arms seem kinda dinky. Sludge was a surprise, honestly. I think aside from Grimlock, I might actually prefer his proportions the most. He looks like a beefy dude, but not awkwardly barrel-chested like Slug and Snarl. He wears his dino parts well, he looks mighty redwood sturdy, and while these stickers aren't as prominent as what's on the rest of the team, I think they complement him the best. I especially love the reflective sticker stripes around the ribs, but the red and blue tones over the otherwise all-black hips also pop super well. This is probably where some of you will get annoyed with me because I complain about Snarl looking a bit sparse in Dino mode, but now I'm gonna complain about him being a little too busy in robot mode. I know, I'm the worst. I mean, I do still think Snarl looks cool either way. His upper body isn't quite as stretched out as Slug's, though it still makes his waist look a little tiny. His limbs are bulky enough to fit in with everything else, and he has the requisite shin plates and split tail backpack. All good stuff. It's just, when lined up with everyone else, the stickers might be overdoing it a tiny bit. I think it mostly comes down to the lower torso and waist area. Between the silver, orange, and blue detailing in the stomach, the red, black, and silver in the hips, and the blue, black, yellow, and red in the pelvis, my eyes keep getting lost. It's just a little too much in too small of an area. And if Snarl's bit didn't annoy anyone, Swoop's bit probably will, because for all of my griping about his Dino Mode transformation, his robot mode looks pretty dang spiffy. As per usual, he's the most standard human looking of the bunch when it comes to proportions, barring a slightly too wide chest anyway. He's just like a slightly boxy guy with really bad bedhead. I wouldn't say this makes him better than anyone else on the team, but it does help him stand out in a way I can appreciate. The repro labels are also arguably the best of the lot here. I still personally prefer Sludge's look overall, but Swoop's stickers do a fantastic job of bringing out smaller details that don't overpower his aesthetic, and of beefing up what's already there. Like, look at these overlapping matte and shiny metallic blues. This is excellent. I also love how you get a little bit of additional red and silver or gray on the outside of the legs, but then you also get more of that breakup on the inside now, where this was normally all gray. It makes a difference. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the head sculpts, but here we go. Grimlock looks practically perfect, but I kind of already said that before. More than once. Slug sculpt and paint are good, but again, I'd have personally preferred a more toy-styled head in black instead of red. Also, it's a little squished if you look at it from the side. Sludge is appropriately sludge, if maybe a bit more boxy than I'm used to seeing, but that's not really a bad thing. Snarl is good overall, but the proportions do make his face look a little stretched out. In fact, the more I look at it, the more I'm picturing that one moment in Army of Darkness. If you've seen it, you know the one. And Swoop is, one more time, Swoop. His head does most of the work while his face is just there, with his weirdly pronounced forehead and the kind of expression you'd see on somebody's little brother who was forced to go with an older sibling's friend group to the mall and ending up spending way too much time in the CD store when the toy store is literally just like 3 doors down. Why are they spending so much time in there? He could have just stayed home and finally gotten past that one part in Super Metroid that's been giving him trouble for the past week. So, articulation? Alright, this is going to be very similar across the board, but Grimlock has a ball-jointed head, so he can look up and down, he can tilt side to side an appreciable amount and go all the way around. Shoulders, if you get the wings out of the way, can go all the way around, can go out to 90, you get bicep rotation, you get a single-jointed elbow that bends well past 90, you also get wrist rotation, and then as indicated previously, the wings on the back can swing forward and back as well as go up and down. So you can position those in a bunch of different ways, however you want. You can get expressive with it. It's good stuff. The waist rotates. Whoop, he's whacking into the light. The waist rotates. The hips go forward on little soft detents. A little past 90, can go back pretty much to 90, can go out to 90. You get thigh swivels, and then you get single-jointed knees that bend just under 90 degrees, and also ankle tilts. And you get the little molding in there that kind of fills that in so it doesn't look hollow when he does that. Unfortunately, not all the Dinobots do that, but Grimlock does. Slug is a very similar story, except the head manipulation is definitely tricky because of this hood. He can look up and down. He does get tilt, but again, it's hard to access with the dino jaw in the way, but you get it. And he can spin 360, but I'm not going to do it because of this. It'll just be annoying to get around it. The arms, well, first of all, the flaps can just kind of flap. They can't really move once they're tabbed in. The arms can go out a little bit past 90, can rotate on soft detents all the way around. You just kind of have to look out for this plate bit here. Bicep swivels, double jointed elbow. That's right, because of the way it all comes together. The bend pretty well past 90, and then also wrist swivel, much like Grimlock. The waist does rotate, though the tail can get in the way, but you can kind of extend it out to get it out of the way enough to get a little bit more dynamic with it, but then the rest of the backpack starts to fall apart, so yeah, you kind of pick one. The hips can go forward past 90 and back if you can bring the leg out to get around that tail, out to 90, or back to 90. Can go out to 90, you get thigh rotation, and then you get double jointed knees because of the transformation that can basically bend to 90 that way, or if you use the upper joint, can bend just about to 90, and then you can use that lower joint for even more bend. You can't go all the way in because now, at least when you've got the dino rear legs tucked inside the legs, you can't go back all the way, but that's still a really nice knee bend. And then the ankle tilts all the way down, and you unfortunately, you don't get, as I mentioned, you don't get the Grimlock thing that fills it in, but the way this is designed, when you look at it from the front, it doesn't really look broken up at all, just because of all the bits, so that's good. Sludge is a chunk, and his wings kind of get in the way, but I still like his articulation as well. You've got the rotating head. You don't really get any side to side, and you don't really get any up and down just because of how big the head is, but you can use the plank that the head is on to look up a bit. If you go too far, it gives you a gap, but still, you get some movement. You can't look down. The arms, I'm going to use this one because the ratchet on this one isn't as scary. These get in the way a lot, so I'm just going to untab it and bring it back, which that's the only way to move it, because otherwise when it's tabbed in, it just moves like that or forward. So getting that back, the arm can go out to 90. You get the shoulder rotation that theoretically can go all the way around, but that wing does get in the way. Bicep rotation that's weirdly really stiff on both of these arms, but you get the bicep rotation that goes all the way around. You get a single elbow to bend there, but if you use that extra bit of, if you unclip that extra elbow bit, you can bend it in further to go past 90. I like to click it in for robot mode though. And wrist swivels, as you'd expect. And also you can kind of bring the fist down slightly. The waist does rotate, but it does start to collide with what's going on back here. This stuff will get out of the way, but it does end up untabbing the dino head. Unless you swing the dino head up and out of the way so that the forelegs can get up and out of the way. But waist can rotate. The hips can go forward a little bit past 90, can go back if there's nothing in the way to 90, can go out to 90. You get thigh rotation, and the knees bend to 90. And the ankles are weirdly limited for some reason. Like, you can bring them down, but this seems to be about as... Oh, nope, there we go. Okay, just had to push it a little further. Oh, that's what it is. It's the toes. So you kind of need to... If you want to bring the ankle out further, the toe kind of has to move a little bit so that you get enough clearance, and then you can shift the toe back up. But the ankle can go all the way down. It just... This is where you start getting that obvious emptiness when you're using the ankles. Still not bad articulation, though. Snarl is much the same story. The head is on a ball joint, so you get some side-to-side wiggle, some up and down movement, but not as much as, say, Grimlock or Snarl, or Slug, rather, can rotate all the way around. The arms can go forward and back. The tail gets in the way, but you can bring them out to go around. And can go out past 90, you get a bicep rotation, and then you've got that single-jointed elbow that bends that far, but if you want to unplug the transformation joint, you can do that for a full all-the-way up bend. It doesn't look great, but you can do it. And then the wrists do also swivel. And if you want, you can use that transformation joint for a little bit of downward motion. The waist rotates, and nothing gets in the way this time, so that's nice. The hips can go forward past 90, can go back to 90, can go, to 90. Can go out to 90, thigh rotation. The knees bend very slightly past 90, and the ankles bend to 90, but they're, again, like Sludge, they're just gaps back there, so not quite as pretty to look at as, say, Grimlock or Slug, but eh. And finally, Little Bro. Little Bro has a head that is on a ball joint, but you don't really get a lot of side-to-side tilt, but you can look up and down. Well, up mainly. If you unplug that transformation joint, you can then make him look down, but it starts to look awkward, so you don't want to do it too much. But that kind of works. And of course, it can rotate. You just kind of have to be mindful of all the square bits and collar pieces and whatnot. The wings can rotate back pretty far when they're all squished together. And if you want, you can unfurl them and use the wing joints in robot mode. I prefer not to, but you can. The arms go out a little bit past 90. They can rotate all the way around. You still have to look out for the wings a little bit, but the wings can get out of the way. Bicep swivels, single jointed elbow that bends to 90. That does not want to bend in any further. Wrist rotation. And if you want, there's a joint in the upper body for like reverse butterfly motion that I'm pretty sure they put in there for the sake of the wings angling up in Dino mode, but you can use that to angle the shoulders out. It's almost imperceptible, but you can angle the arms out like that. So I count it as a butterfly joint. And then you get waist rotation that is a bit impeded by the beak in the front there. I mean, that's still a pretty decent range, but if you want to get dynamic with it, you're gonna need to untab it and kind of swing it up. So yeah, it's a little awkward looking, but it's Swoop. It's how his design works, so it's fine. I'm not mad about it or anything. Then the hips can go forward to 90, can go back, as long as the wings aren't in the way, the wing tips anyway, can go back to 90, can go out to 90, you get thigh rotation, double jointed knees because of the transformation, so you can bend them all the way in. You even get little boosters there. And the feet, you can angle the heels, you can bend in the toes if you want, and Ankle tilts, which can go practically to 90, and you get a little bit of molding in there so that it doesn't look too broken up if you don't get really extreme with it. Okay, we're getting there. The accessories are a little weird. The hunks of plastic representing weapons are fine, but the distribution was handled in a weird way. Grimlock comes with his gun but no sword, but Swoop comes with 2 swords, one of which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be for Grimlock, because this looks an awful lot like a classic Grimlock sword. Slug has his blaster or gun or shotgun or whatever in this kind of pearlescent white that doesn't really go with the rest of the weapons, but I don't know. I think it's still fine. The sword, though, this came with Comic Colors Grimlock. The gun Sludge comes with is nice and chunky, and I like that they added some gold paint detailing, but like Slug, his sword came with comic book Grimlock. And it's kind of weird how almost half the length of the sword is this mechanical nonsense instead of an actual blade, but whatever. I'm not a Dinobot sword expert. Also, before I forget, blast effect, kind of blast effect, though the tip there is very, very shallow, so this may not hold very well. And blast effect on either barrel. Snarl's box includes his sword, painted in silver, and it looks good, but also it's both silver instead of red, so it doesn't match any of the other swords, and it's much more ornate looking than the others, so it doesn't quite fit in. And it is kind of a shame that out of all the Dinobots, he doesn't get a gun. Then again, maybe he's not supposed to have a gun, and maybe the sword is supposed to be silver instead of red. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm pretty sure, at least in the cartoon, I think the sword was his only weapon and he didn't have guns, but like the toy came with guns, so I don't know. It does just kind of make him seem like the odd bot out. And no blast effects because sword. And finally, there is Swoop, with his 2 swords, but one is totally meant for Grimlock, plus a pair of guns, or rocket launchers, I think, which you can keep on the wings, like I always do, or put in his hands to use as guns if you prefer. They just unplug, and when you plug them into the hands, there are these little lips here that are designed, like they're carved out so that they go around the bulk of his forearm. They don't peg in, like, super deep, but they work. And the ends, or missiles, do pop off if you want, so you can give them blast effects. And, I don't know, you could give him shoulder spikes, or you can hold it. Just like with the Dino Modes, these guys are all leaders, so they're quite tall. Even Swoop, who's the shortest of the bunch, ends up towering over modern Deluxes and Voyagers. They're all a bit taller than a lot of modern leaders, too, now that I'm looking at them. That said, seeing them all together in a group, Grimlock seemingly being the second shortest behind Swoop does sit a little weird. This video, heck, this shot, has been a long time coming. I knew back when I first got a hold of Studio Series 86 Grimlock in 2021 that I was going to go all in on the full team. Something I pretty much never do with any other iterations of the Dinobots, except Volcanicus, because that's kind of a requirement. But then it ended up taking a lot longer than expected because I also wanted to get everyone decked out in repro labels, which meant waiting for more figures, and then waiting for more sets to release. And then Swoop took his sweet time. You'd think being the one that can fly, he'd have been a bit faster. Now that I'm finally done, I'm content. Both with the 86 Dinobots plus repro labels as a whole, and with the idea of owning a complete team of regular, non-combining Dinobots. My itch has been thoroughly scratched. And what a team they make, right? Hasbro managed to keep the style and overall design very consistent, even though the releases were kind of scattered across several years. This, my friends, is a well-played long game. They all complement each other beautifully, but at the same time, each of them works well as a standalone figure, so if you only wanted whichever one is your favorite, you probably won't feel like you're missing out. It does suck that you have to buy Swoop and Comic Book Grimlock if you want everybody to have a mostly full armory, though. Anyway, that's enough about what I think. What do you all think of the Studio Series 86 Dinobots? As, like, a team or individually? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back to say more words about toys at you next time.